Top Gun Maverick is the sequel we've all been waiting for since 1986. 36 years later, we get to relive all the iconic moments that we know and love. But this time, the stakes are higher. The planes are bigger, faster and more powerful than ever. But is the movie any better? After 3 long decades, Captain Pete Maverick serves as a test pilot with the US Navy. You'd think after so many years in the Navy he would be promoted, right? No. Maverick may look older, but he's still young at heart and enjoys nothing more than the thrill of flying in the flashiest way possible. Just like the first Top Gun, Maverick still has that cocky arrogance to him that puts himself and everyone around him at risk. But the time has arrived for him to come of age when he is ordered to train an elite group of pilots for Top Gun, for a mission that involves them bombing a uranium enrichment facility in a nation that probably rhymes with Usher. I hope I'm not jailed for this. So Maverick is given one last shot to do what he loves. However, there is more conflict at helm when one of the pilots he must train is the son of his best friend Goose, who tragically died in the first film. Goose's son Roos is resentful towards Maverick, and that increases the jeopardy of the whole mission. Now, I'm not really a fan of the original Top Gun. There's moments to enjoy regarding the aviation scenes and the dynamic between Goose and Maverick, but the rest of the movie is pretty dry and forgettable. The music was good though, and it shifts into the sequel as a real nostalgia treat for the fans. Going into Top Gun Maverick, I wasn't really expecting much. The trailers didn't particularly excite me. It left me more puzzled as to why this was being made and who really asked for this. I was almost against seeing this movie because it seemed like another one of those easy cash-in remakes that just based on nostalgia. It was frustrating that this much money was being commissioned into movies we've already seen before and nothing original. However, the movie suddenly began to receive a lot of praise, particularly for the aviation sequences, which was the best part of the original movie and the only reason why I can tolerate it. So I was curious to see how this would deliver 36 years later. And after seeing the movie, I can affirmably say that this is one that must be seen on the big screen. Not every scene is a spectacle to behold. All the shots on the ground are pretty average, but everything that goes on in the sky is breathtaking. The authenticity of everything surrounding the aircrafts and the flight maneuvers just look amazing. You could really tell how much work had gone into getting this right. The movie had to be delayed a year to get as much footage in the interior and exterior of the planes that the actors had to fly in. That's what really surprised me about this movie. This wasn't just shot in some studio in LA or Atlanta with a giant blue screen. They were all really flying the planes in the sky. Obviously CGI would have been used for the difficult maneuvers, but that wasn't even noticeable because they weren't reliant on it. The actors had 3 months of rigorous training with the Navy, including a whole ton of stuff such as underwater evacuation and aerial aviation. Tom Cruise set this whole training boot camp so they could shoot practically and actually fly in the F-18s. How the aerial shots were done looked really difficult to pull off. Multiple cameras were used all around the F-18 Hornets and the actors needed to place them in a way where they would have to direct themselves. It was also quite precise and meticulous because if the shot didn't look great, they would have to go back up on the F-18 and try again until the lighting is good enough to capture the desired shot. It's one of the most memorable action sequences I've seen since Mad Max Fury Road. Sure, the Mission Impossible movies have some pretty grounded and exhilarating sequences, but just being in the air alone gives a different dynamic to the action genre because it's so unique. Alright, so the story on the other hand is give or take. It's not why I came to see this movie and it's not why you did too. I'm all for the spectacle, but the characters could definitely be done with equal dedication as the technical aspects of the movie. They have some emotional elements to bring from the original surrounding Roost and his rocky relationship with Maverick, but this is something that was covered in flashes because they had to add a romantic subplot that just didn't need to happen. If Jennifer Connelly was in the original film, maybe her presence would have some heft towards the story, but every scene between her and Cruise was one of the least interesting aspects of the movie. It was a real slow burner and I just wanted to yell get on with it in the theatres. The other pilots weren't particularly great either. They tried to portray these people with a rock and roll vibe similar to the original, but you have to have real charisma for that to work. These are naval pilots going into a dangerous mission, exploring genuine psychological obstacles that all people in the Navy, Air Force and Army must face would have given us a real emotional attachment to the characters. The way I would go about watching this is by starting with the first 10-15 minutes, then I'd leave, I'd grab a bite to eat, do my taxes, and come back for the last hour, which quite honestly saved this movie from sinking into the ocean. I just felt that the dynamic between Roost and Maverick should have been the main driving force of the movie, but it didn't feel like that. I wasn't sure where it was going at one point. When the two were on screen I was invested, and even the pilot called Hangman was pretty interesting. He played a semi-rival to Roost in a similar fashion to the way that Iceman was to Maverick, but there wasn't enough time to let this grow and blossom. They had all these familiar character traits, such as John Hamm's character being the strict commander who opposes Maverick at every chance he gets, but it's not done with great depth. The dialogue doesn't help here. Not that it was bad, it was very mechanical, like something you would hear in a video game. You've heard it all 1,000 times. It's the type of dialogue that's used to purposely progress the story, but not the development of the characters. And you leave that aspect dragging behind while the narrative goes into the third, where you only find yourself invested in a couple of characters. It just felt like a waste of time introducing all those pilots in the first act because they were all disposable in the end. In spite of these criticisms, the last act is quite entertaining and probably the best action sequence you'll see this year because of the sheer hard work gone into the practical effects and cinematography. It's a movie that I highly recommend you see on the biggest screen possible and you will not be disappointed. So overall, Top Gun Maverick is great from an action point of view, but not so great from a story one.